Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of the Horror Countdown podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and with me tonight is one of my dearest friends in podcasting, the man who I've recorded more hours with than anyone else in the world, my good friend, Mr. Venom.
Bienvenidos, señores y señoras. Oh, wait a minute. This podcast isn't actually in Spanish, is it? All right.
Mm.
Greetings and salutations, my friends. How the hell is everybody? Don, thank you so much for having me. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's been great. Like I said before, we've recorded more hours than anyone else around, and it's only natural that we get to do this. And I'm incredibly excited to announce that if that little intro didn't give it away, tonight we're going to be discussing Spanish language horror.
Ah, my one of my first loves. Well, maybe not my first love. American horror definitely would be first, but through my grandmother and some of the older aunts and uncles in my family, I was introduced to like a lot of Jess Franco stuff and Paul Naschy stuff like that. So yeah, Spanish horror, and on top of the fact that I, of course, am a Spaniard, as you and most of my listeners know. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for this one.
Yeah, indeed. I was talking earlier that I was going through my list. I had a couple of choices on mine that I had on there just because they were Latin. But then I realized, oh crap, they're Brazilian. Brazilians are Portuguese. So I had to switch them out at the last minute.
There you go.
So yeah, for this list, we decided to strictly limit it to Spanish speaking. Or I'm sure you'll have a couple of others that are Spanish in a sense, but not necessarily true Spanish. I'm sure there's several offshoots from sections of Spain that you have that are not traditional Castilian or normal Spanish, but are close enough that I'm not going to split hairs. But because mine were Portuguese, I kind of took them off at the last second. But
Yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure that Spanish-speaking countries in South America also counted because there's one movie in particular from Argentina that I just could not keep off this list. It would be an absolute travesty.
oh yeah.
And then there was almost another one from what was it? It was from Bolivia, but that one ended up not making my top 10. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure all my bases were covered because that one movie from Argentina, I'm not doing a Spanish language horror list without including that one.
And I'm probably gonna guess that that one's gonna be covered because knowing you, I'm gonna venture a guess and I'm gonna make a bet with myself.
Yep,
I'll announce it when it comes up, but
there you go.
knowing you, I'm gonna guess pretty much. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
like I said earlier, a couple of choices were Brazilian, so I had to swap those out at the last minute. But I'm really pleased with my list. I think I got a nice cross selection of stuff. Heavily favored Spain, just natural. But yeah, I do have a couple of Latin American ones. A couple Mexican.
Mhm.
Let's see, I've got uh, three or four from Mexico. I've got one from Chile, one from Argentina, and I even have a co-production. Heavily leaning, or I'm sorry, two co-productions. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot about myself while making this list because I honestly thought that there would be a lot more classic Spanish horror on my list because as I mentioned earlier, my introduction to Spanish horror was really early. So when you came to me with the idea for this, I'm like, okay, there's probably going to be a Jess Franco movie in here. There's probably going to be an Armando de Osorio movie in here, and there's probably going to be a Paul Naschy movie in here. Guess what? There's not a movie on my top 10 that's older than 1995, and I'm absolutely shocked about that. But
ah,
man, it's just so much great Spanish horror has come out in the last 25 years that as much as I love the classic Spanish horror directors, I just couldn't bring myself to leave out any of the movies in my top 10. They all mean a lot to me.
well, I mean, this is probably going to be a lot of fun then, because when I came to listing Spanish horror, there's only one. Or, I'm sorry, there's only two post 70s.
Nice.
Yeah, so I have the old school covered, and I'm pretty sure you'll have the new school covered. So
There you go.
this will be a fun little documentation of Spanish horror to check out. So, guess with that, let's dive into our list. Have any preferences or?
No, sir. I'll let you drive the bus.
Okay, well, in that case, let's well, we're gonna go with one of my personal favorite Mexican horror films. Let's see how long this little experimentation of mine lasts, because I went with Cementerio del Terror, or
Nice.
Ruben Galindo's Cemetery of Terror. Um, yeah, this one was an absolute blast when I first discovered it. Basically involve it's a two-pronged storyline. So this is kind of an unusual film. First half of the film is a group of teens involved in a little lakeside retreat unwittingly find themselves being stalked one by one by a mysterious killer, only to realize halfway through the film that holy crap, he kills everyone. And he ends up managing to procure his hands on a book of the dead that was held in residence at the cabin, and raises the dead. So the second half of the film is zombie, sort of a Night of the Living Dead kind of rip off. But I'm such a fan of this. It's kind of goofy, and it kind of mixes its tones really oddly, in that the slasher half of the first part of the film is dark and brutal, and it has great kills, tons of atmosphere, and all kinds of fun stuff going on. And then the zombie out film is kind of child friendly, because the main character is a teenager, and her, I think it's her brother and his friend. So the trick or treat aged kids, they're going around, and they wind up in the middle of this graveyard, and they have to escape it when the zombies run out. So it's kind of weird seeing the two juxtaposed against each other, but it works. It's got a lot of fun going on. You get your zombie outbreak, you get your slasher mayhem, and even has a small little cameo from Mexican legend Hugo Stiglitz. So yeah, for those that aren't familiar, he's one of the biggest stars in Mexican cinema, or 60s and 70s. So
hmm
seeing
My
him,
my grandmother was a huge fan.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people in that age, or that age bracket, are going to say the same thing.
hmm
So yeah, seeing him pop up in here. Of course, genre fans will know him as the lead reporter in Nightmare City, which unfortunately will not make my list. But that's for those that don't know him, he's the reporter from Nightmare City. So yeah, overall, yeah, one of my favorite films. I'm a huge fan of this one, and definitely check it out if you can. 1985's Cementerio del Terror.
Awesome pick. It's been ages since I've seen that, but I do remember enjoying it. I think I actually saw it in Spanish too, like without subs. So that was an interesting experience. But yeah. So for my number 10, let's start out the list with anyone who's listened to the last couple of episodes of Fresh Cuts with Don and myself knows that I am a fan of bleak endings. I've always kind of been a big fan of either when the villain actually wins or when the situation at the end of the film kind of leaves the world worse than when the film started. So I'm a big fan of that. So it makes sense that my number 10 is coming to you from Mexico. This is 2013's Here Comes the Devil, written and directed by Adrian Garcia Bugliano. And obviously, the story of two children who disappear into a cave just outside of Tijuana, and they end up coming back, but there is something different about them, and the movie kind of goes on from there. This was a great one because as I'm watching it, it feels like I know where the ending is going, but then they pull a little bit of a swerve at the end. Not so much a twist, but just the ending went in a direction that I didn't anticipate it going to. And it ended up giving me one of those dark, bleak endings that I absolutely adore. So yeah, this was an easy one for me. Just great performances by the kids, great performances by the parents, who are obviously all over the place emotionally, worry, despair, fear, anger, hate, just all of it. And it really comes across in these performances. And, as I said, this one's not necessarily a favorite of most genre fans. I know it's a more recent one that, doesn't have a very high rating on IMDb, but as I've said, these kind of bleak stories just kind of speak to me. So yeah, my number 10 is Here Comes the Devil.
Nice. I haven't seen that one. I have seen the sequel. Here Comes the Devil 2 or
Mhm.
Part 2 or something. I watched it one day on Hulu, thinking it was actually the original, and it was the sequel. So I do need to track the I do need to track the original down because I haven't seen that one yet. But
Mhm.
I do like the sequel. It's got its moments. If I would have seen the original and connected them, maybe I would think a little highly of it. But nice. Yeah, it's one
Mhm.
that I definitely want to get to. So,
There you go.
yeah. Moving on to my number nine. We're gonna visit contemporary Spain, and we're gonna visit a genre throwback that just speaks to me in more ways than I can imagine. 2011's Lobos de Arga, or Game of Werewolves.
Nice.
So this one is a it's actually kind of a comedy. If For those that are unfamiliar, it revolves around a writer who is a kind of like a struggling horror author. His last couple of novels haven't really sold that well, and he finds a, strange letter from his hometown that he's trying to do. He's basically spent his entire life trying to get out of, and they need a for some kind of a mission back in his hometown. They never really explicitly state it, either that or I don't remember. But he goes back to his hometown and eventually discovers that there's a werewolfy curse placed upon the
Mhm.
villagers, and things go haywire from there. So, for those that aren't aware, a lot of Spanish horror from the 60s and 70s is pretty much dictated by one name, Jacinto Molina or Paul Naschy. And
Mhm.
this is an absolute glorious throwback to those kinds of films. The werewolves, and I do mean werewolves because there's more than one. Surprise, surprise. Uh, yeah, all of the werewolves in this are just given that fantastic old school makeup. Everything looks exactly kind of like the Wolfman look that Nashi had back in the glory days of his work, and it just turns into this hysterical ride where he's trying to not get caught up in what's going on because he doesn't really want to be there, and all the townspeople are trying to like get him to stay, and all this kinds of shenanigans and misunderstandings happen, and then the final half occurs, and it's just basically this huge chase through this town, and oh god, it's just gothic atmosphere to its fullest extent. It's just a lot of fun, and tons of gore, lots of great physical comedy, great looking werewolves. It's an absolute blast. So
Yeah, man, I missed this one. I remember seeing it was either a poster or like an ad maybe online for it, and I remember thinking it looked interesting, but I just never got around to it. But yeah, that sounds great.
yeah, I was able to catch it on cable TV. I don't remember the station. Basically I saw it very shortly after it came out, so I don't really remember. But I caught it on TV, and it was always one that stuck with me. Not just because I'm a huge werewolf fan, but it being just a great throwback to Nashi and all of the gothic horror stuff in the '70s. So
Very cool.
yeah, if you can find it, it's definitely worth a look. So
Yeah,
number nine for me is Lobos de Arga.
awesome. All right, now my number nine. This is going to be the contentious pick of my top 10 because this is an absolute guilty pleasure. Most people, including myself, wouldn't try to convince anyone that this movie is a horror classic or anything like that. But anyone who knows me knows I love zombies, I love horror comedy. And when you put them both together, it's almost always a winning combination. For me, obviously, we think about movies like Shaun of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead, things like that. Shaun of the Dead being literally one of my favorite horror comedies of all time. So that makes my number nine something that I'm probably going to get a little bit of hate for, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is Juan de los Muertos, coming from Cuba this time, and it's more affectionately known in the United States as Juan of the Dead. Like I said, this is a horror comedy. based around the zombie apocalypse, as opposed to Shaun of the Dead, where they actually show the beginning of the apocalypse there. With Juan of the Dead, everything is already in motion. You know, Cuba is already a hellhole of zombies. But this group of three or four friends actually decide to start a business. And what is their business? They clean zombies out of your property. Yes, they will come to your house. If you have zombies in there and you don't want to have to deal with them yourself, they will come and clean them out. Obviously, kill them, get rid of the bodies. Unfortunately, we never actually get to see them perform this throughout the film because of just, you know, all sorts of different wacky scenarios and situations that occur. It is very solidly tongue in cheek, which is why I know a lot of people maybe don't enjoy this one. Um, but there's animated sequences in this one that I really really enjoy. There's a spectacular hero sacrifice scene at the end that really just made this movie one of my favorite horror comedies of all time. And Juan is such a, you know, Juan himself is such a great character. You know, he comes off as like this skinny little loser early on, but then ultimately he becomes, you know, not the big hero of the film, but one of the major pieces as to why he and, you know, anyone who's able to survive is able to survive. So, yeah, this is a weird pick, but it's my top 10, and I absolutely adore Juan of the Dead. So here it is at number 9.
And you're not going to get anything from me. It's an honorable mention.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan as well, for much of those same reasons. So yeah, that one made my honorable mentions list. So yeah, I don't have it as affectionately as you, but I'm
Mhm.
definitely on the positive side with that one. So
Very cool.
yeah. For moving on to my number 8, this is going to be the oldest one on the list. Not necessarily the greatest film, but one that always stuck with me first time I saw it. 1963's La Maldición de la Llorona. And unfortunately, it's the only one of these on the list. I know that there's probably a couple of others I could have gone with, but I've always just absolutely adored this one. I love just it's sort of a gothic atmosphere. It's not necessarily anything new. It's basically just, you know, a small town community just caught in the grip of the La Llorona ghost and trying to, you know, stop it before it spreads and, you know, stuff excuse from there. But anyone that's you know, a fan of like the Roger Corman kind of gothic horror, you know, with especially the stuff that he was doing with you know, Vincent Price, you know, with the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, this is going to fit right in. Even some of the, you know, other smaller stuff like, you know, some of the Italian gothic stuff that Mario Bava was doing in Italy, or you know, the early Jess Franco stuff like Dr. Z, or sadistic Baron von Klaus, and couple of that other stuff that was coming out. This is going to be right up your alley. Just absolutely fantastic atmosphere. The witch looks terrifying. I mean, this is one of the best looking makeups that you'll see in this kind of a budget. It just looks incredible, and I love just the way that it just, you know, that wail that it just goes along with it is fantastic. Oh yeah, I realize it's kind of cheap. It definitely shows its budget. It's, you know, it's not the greatest, you know, technical wise, but I've always enjoyed this one. It's always been one that I've always kind of championed as, like, you know, this under the radar gothic horror film. But if you can get a chance to watch it, give it a shot. You'll probably find it under the translated title, "The Curse of the Weeping Woman," but it's definitely worth a watch. So
I'm not 100% sure if I've seen this one. I've seen multiple La Llorona movies over the years, and the Weeping Lady, the Weeping Woman, things like that. So
yeah,
it's quite possible I've seen it, but just based on your description, it doesn't really ring a bell. But I mean, I'm always down for La Llorona movies. Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, I think there was one that there was a film just called La Llorona from '61 or '62 or something like that. That kind of I think it like kickstarted a small little series of you know, La Llorona movies. So maybe
Hmm.
that could have been one that you saw. Because
Potentially, yeah.
yeah, because there was I know that there was a couple of others. I'm pretty sure Santo fought it at some point, so that could have been another potential one.
Hmm.
But Yeah, the Maldición de la Llorona was it was one that I always really enjoyed, and it's definitely well at number 8 on my list. So
Awesome. I'll find it. I'll check it out. Awesome. So for my number 8, once again, we're still solidly into 2010s. This film, it comes to us from Spain, I believe. Let me verify. And yes, it comes to us from Spain. Duh, it's set in Madrid. I guess I should have just looked at that. Yes, this is from 2017. This was a Netflix release here in the States. This was indeed a film that Mike and myself reviewed on Fresh Cuts before Don joined us a couple of years ago. And this is coming to you from one of my favorite modern Spanish directors ever, Paco Plaza, the director of Rec, which, I'm sure we'll hear about him more later on. But this is his more recent effort. This is called Veronica. This is the story of a teenage girl who becomes haunted by an evil spirit after she ends up playing with a Ouija board with a couple of her classmates. The general rules apply. They're not playing the Ouija or the spirit board, if you will, with the designated rules that they're supposed to be using. They end up releasing something into their school, which ends up attaching itself to Veronica. And the movie just kind of goes along from there. This one is very much like Juan of the Dead in the sense that it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I think more people would probably say that this is, something that might quote unquote deserve to be in a Spanish top 10. I know it's a little bit more modern and it doesn't really flip the script. It doesn't really do too many things differently. There was a couple of things that I did like about it that it did that was original. But for me, just some of the demonic set pieces just worked really, really well. The creature design on the demon, which we don't see all that much throughout the film, but we do see him here and there, is very off-putting. I mean, just a great creature design on that one. Some really great performances from teenage girls because obviously these girls are in high school. And whenever I see actors under the age of 20 that can actually give performances like this that actually get an emotion out of me, then I'm always impressed. It doesn't matter what country they come from. So yeah, this is probably going to be like the quieter film on my list, as it's not the most bombastic demonic possession film you've ever seen. It's absolutely not, the cleansing hour or anything too spectacular like that. But again, anyone who knows me knows I love slow burns, and I do absolutely adore demonic possession stories. So yeah, this one's kind of another no-brainer for me. That is a Veronica at number 8.
so my number 7 is Veronica from
Sure.
2018. I'm Yeah, this one just absolutely worked for me. I cannot disagree with anything you said. It's not, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not, doing anything original that we haven't seen in dozens of others. I mean, I can probably list off, about 50,000 films that kind of utilize a lot of the tropes and topics that this goes through, but I don't necessarily need originality when the, effectiveness is, it, you know, the, like you said, the sequences in here are just effective. I mean, the finale in that house is just fantastic. I love the final 2/3 of this is just an absolute blast. And I mean, like you said, it's just so well done, and you know, it doesn't play by anything that hasn't been done before, but it does it well.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's, that works every now and then, and it works here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
before you joined Fresh Cuts, I remember Mike and I used to get into conversations about originality and things like that, and trying to kind of, you know, make films outside of the box, not make them as tropey as usual things like that. And I remember getting into conversations with Mike where I said the exact same thing you just said. I don't necessarily need a 100% original story if what you give me is solid, if the set pieces are effective, if the performances are watchable, if the filmmaking skills are on point, great editing, great score, great cinematography, things like that. And Veronica has all of that. So yeah, you're right, it absolutely does not reinvent the wheel, but despite that, it's a really nice wheel that we get out of it.
exactly. Yeah, couldn't have put it any better.
Oh yeah, so I'm sorry. We were
Yeah.
both talking about Veronica, so I kind of got lost there for a second.
No,
Okay.
no worries.
My number seven is a film that actually got some Oscar attention, if I remember correctly. It was actually nominated for Best Foreign Film. It was either Best Foreign Film or I forget which, but it does have an Oscar nomination. This is starring Mr. Antonio Banderas. This is coming to you from 2011. I believe this is coming from Mexico, if I remember correctly. No, no, this is another Spanish film. No, we are talking Spain once again, the homeland, my homeland, for those who don't know. So this is, of course, 2011's The Skin I Live In. Now, a lot of people might look at this and not call it horror, and that's valid. If you look at this film as more of a psychological thriller or, whatever you want to go with, that's fine. But considering first what happens to Antonio's character, the doctor, when he has to deal with his daughter who's recently been raped, that's a horror show in and of itself. But then Antonio Banderas, of course, playing Robert Ledgard, who is a plastic surgeon. I'll leave that to your imagination. He basically decides to get revenge on the rapist, on his daughter's rapist. And let's just say it's a very, very interesting form of revenge. This is a movie that I just do not want to spoil. This movie has to be experienced. If you have any interest in Spanish, thrillers, borderline horror, I would strongly suggest this one. Once again, you've got great performances. Antonio Banderas, what can you say about the man? He's great in almost everything he's in, especially if it's Spanish language when he's in in his native element. Um, the performances here of the rapist, the daughter, the women involved, just the rapist actually has a family. um I'm sorry, when I say the women involved, I don't mean as victims. This guy isn't a career rapist. He actually just rapes the doctor's daughter on a drunken just happenstance. But he actually does have a family. He's got a mother and a sister who care about him. And so it's really kind of weird to watch this movie and, when it's flip flopping between stories where you're kind of following the family of the rape victim and then you're kind of following the family of the rapist for a little while. But like I said, the high point of this film really is in its twist. When you get that reveal of just what this doctor decides to do to this rapist to try to get revenge, it is just it's chef's kiss, my friends. It is just, it's so petty and vindictive, and anyone who knows me knows I enjoy myself a good petty vindictive horror movie character, and Antonio Banderas's Robert Ledgard is exactly that. So yeah, my number seven is The Skin I Live In, or in Spanish, La Piel del Obito.
Nice. I first saw it when right around when it came over here. A lot of people were talking about it. I didn't find it horror enough at the time, but I'm definitely willing to give it a revisit because I have kind of shifted a lot of what I've sort of deemed horror over the years. So it's one of those that I've kind of been keen to, give it another watch and give it a try. Because yeah, I know that there's a lot of people that have been talking about it, so it's definitely one that I'm kind of intrigued about just to see how differently I'd feel. So
Yeah, I was late to the party on this one. I actually didn't even watch this until 2020 when I was
mm,
part of the People Under the podcast Under the Stairs summer series. That was the first time I'd ever watched this movie, and it floored me. It absolutely blew me away. I loved almost every second of it, even the really, really gross parts. And when I say
mhm,
gross, I'm not talking about viscera. I'm talking about other stuff. I'll leave it to your imagination. But yeah,
yeah,
I'll never argue with anyone who says this isn't horror. If you want to call it a drama, mystery, thriller, that's fine. I'm very okay with that because ultimately it's a spectacular drama, mystery, thriller. So, and that is why it is here in my top 10 at the number seven spot. So, yeah.
nice. All right. So moving on for me, moving on to number six. This is a Chilean movie. We're gonna go visit South America, actually, not just for this one, but for my next two picks. This is 2018's Trauma. When you start a film with a man being forced to rape his mother, and he ends up taking it into his own hands and carrying on the torture when everybody else around him decides, okay, you've had enough, and he keeps doing it, you've won me over. You get that in the opening credits, or before the opening credits. So I was on board with this one pretty much immediately. Vile, gross, you just over the top villains in this. You know, it's basically a rape revenge movie. This guy and his friends are just wandering the countryside, and they come across a group of girls, partying out in the countryside, just out on holiday, and basically never leave the girls alone. You know, trying to torture them and taunt them, and just do whatever they want to, and then the girls start fighting back. So not necessarily as in depth as I Spit on Your Grave, but just as fun, just as cathartic. Given that Spanish twist with the brutality and all the associated sleaze that goes along with it, I had a lot of fun with it. It was definitely
Mhm.
one that just absolutely stuck with me. Even more so since I got to talk to both the director and one of the stars of the film. So I've been
Ah,
friends with.
Lucio, cool.
Yeah, I got to talk with him, and then the main girl, the one that because I think the follow up film from this one was that anthology we covered, "Ill Final Contagion,"
Oh, right.
and
Mhm.
then yeah, the girl in that one, I've been friends with her for several years because I talked with her for this one. So
Very cool.
yeah, kind of little sentimentality pick for there. But if you watch this on your own without that involved, you're gonna be in for a fun time. Or I shouldn't say fun time. I should
Yeah.
say, yeah, it's a good one.
I have a love-hate relationship with rape revenge movies. I hate the first half of the movie, and I almost always love the second half of the movie. Obviously, as any normal person, I am not a fan of rape, and watching it, even simulated rape on film, it just turns my stomach. So, whenever I watch movies like this, be they all the way back to, I Spit on Your Grave, and fast forward to 2018's Revenge. I always say I don't like this subgenre as much. I tend to say that it's my least favorite subgenre of horror, yet I always watch them and they always leave me floored. They almost always leave me floored. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this one's no different. And, obviously, with the Spanish language, it kind of makes it feel more like home for me and these great performances. And yeah, this is just another brutal film to have to watch. And yeah, Jesus, Don, that opening scene, you're absolutely right. As you said, what's funny is that you said I'm on board, and I almost quit the movie after that. That kind of shows where we're both coming from. But I mean, I stuck with and it really is a great film. It is a very, no pun intended, traumatic film to have to watch. And
Oh, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
uh,
I mean, the final 10 minutes of this are just absolutely crushing. So
mhm, exactly.
yeah, and I meant on board by, okay, let's
Oh
see where
no.
you. Yeah, mine wasn't all right. Just
I
uncertain.
absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not calling you a voyeur by any stretch. But
Yeah,
yeah,
mine
this
was more of a, oh, okay, let's see where this goes. But
uh,
yeah, if you can make it past that, and you're in the mood for rape revenge, this is definitely one for you. So number 6 on my list.
there you go. All right. So my number six is going to be a movie. Believe it or not, this is going to be the oldest movie on my list, coming to you from 1995. Like I said, folks, I found out a lot about myself creating this list. I watched over the last month or so, I think I've watched 33 or 34 Spanish horror films. I'd say about eight of them were first time watches because I wanted to make sure that I got all the staples in that I may have missed over the years. And this is one that I was actually turned on to this movie by Mr. Watson, a podcasting brother of ours from the old Horror Corridor show. Currently, I think you can hear him on Horror Movie Weekly and the Watt Z Party that he has with Mr. Dave Z from Exploding Heads, of course. So This film, when I heard Mr. Watson's review of it, I absolutely fell in love with it. Like I was willing to blind buy this movie based on just the description from Mr. Watson, just from his review, the glowing review that he gave it. I decided not to buy it, and I'm actually glad I did because what ended up happening is I ended up renting it, digitally on Amazon, and absolutely falling in love with the film. It's a Christmas staple for me. Maybe not Christmas Day. I don't really tend to watch a lot of horror on Christmas Day. I still tend to stick to the classic Christmas, movies and specials. But during the month of December, this is an absolute must watch. And the reason I'm glad I didn't buy it right away was because right after I rented it, they announced the 4K release. And that's when I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to plop $40 down for this because Mr. Watson was 100% right. This movie is absolutely great. Once again, we're going into kind of horror comedy territory here. And once again, we're talking about Spain. We also have some Italian language in this movie, as there are a couple of Italian characters, but the movie does take place in Madrid. And this film is El Dia de la Bestia, or otherwise known as The Day of the Beast, from writer director Alex de la Iglesia. This is such a great movie. It's at times it's hard to take the movie seriously because it's so funny early on, and the situations that the father is going through, the priest, our main character in the film, especially later in the film, where he actually goes to a heavy metal record store to try to get information about the devil from the clerk working there, because of course all us metalheads know exactly how to conjure the devil. But it ends up being one of the funniest scenes in the film, and even turns into a friendship where the father and this record store clerk end up spending the rest of the next few days together to kind of thwart what they think is going to be the apocalypse. I'll leave it at that for now because this has such a great ending, and it's one of those endings that's up for interpretation. You know what I mean? Like, did all of this actually happen? Was it in the father's head? Did something else happen? But maybe we had an unreliable narrator situation. The ending is satisfying, but just vague enough that it keeps you thinking about what potentially all of it kind of meant. But yeah, the Day of the Beast, my friends, just an absolute fun time. Like I said, it definitely veers towards horror comedy, especially in the first half of the film. But man, and by the way, that 4K Blu-ray, oh my God, the movie is just gorgeous. Better than it's ever looked, obviously, and all the special features. I can't recommend it enough. But yeah, that is my number six film, The Day of the Beast from 1995.
Nice, another one on my honorable mentions list.
Very.
Yeah, the one this was the one that I really wanted to put on there, but yeah, I don't like that, just vagueness that the ending gives you.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah,
It's the ending's not for everybody.
yeah, that was like the main reason why. But yeah, I mean, this one was kind of just like Deathgasm. The first time I saw it, it was kind of
Yes.
like this is just made for me. But I think Deathgasm just it hit me harder than this one did. But yeah, overall, I can't complain about it. I mean, it's still on my honorable mentions, but yeah, move on to number five. Like I've mentioned, we were going to be in South America,
Mhm.
and this one is going to be Argentinian. I went with Ataratos, or Terrified, which my giggle gives me away that my bet was correct, and that was sort of
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was
you get a dollar.
that was that laugh tells me that my bet from earlier was actually a viable one. So
Yep.
I'll just say my piece. This one absolutely floored me when I first saw it. Some of the greatest jump scares I've seen in contemporary horror. Absolutely just immaculate work with the way that they conjure up some of these sequences. I just I loved it. I fell in love with it the first time I saw it. It absolutely just it packs a punch.
Yeah,
And
this wow.
yeah, for those that are not necessarily the biggest fan of quote unquote jump scare factories, this was probably going to be the one that'll turn you around on that because yeah, it's a jump scare factory, but it's absolutely probably almost as good as it. I have no idea why this one never got more attention than it did, because I feel kind of guilty leaving it at number five. But yeah, I'll save it for you. But number five for me is Terrified, or I should say
uh,
Atarados.
Yeah, there you go. I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about this one again, so I'll save my piece till we get to it on my list. But yeah, pretty obvious bet when I mention Argentina and one of my favorite Spanish language films of all time. Yeah, it's a safe bet. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Number five. My number five film. My number five film is actually um, produced by my favorite director of all time. He did not direct this film. He did not write this film. He is just a producer on it. For those who don't know, my favorite director of all time is Mr. Guillermo del Toro. Obviously, stuff like Pan's Labyrinth and Crimson Peak, and obviously the Best Picture Oscar winning Shape of Water, and the almost Best Picture winning Nightmare Alley from just this past year. The man's resume is second to none. But like I said, he did not direct this movie. I would imagine we may still hear his name on this list, but I'll save that. But for my number five, it is El Orfanato, or The Orphanage, written by Sergio Sanchez, directed by J.A. Boyana. I mean, what can I say about this film? This film is a gut punch. Just that ending. It's crazy that so many people tie the ending of this film to its popularity. A lot like Sleepaway Camp. Like, a lot of people don't even remember the majority of Sleepaway Camp, but they remember that ending. And The Orphanage is another one of those movies where if you're a human being in any way, shape, or form, that ending is a goddamn gut punch to watch just a mother's greatest fear just take form right in front of her. And it's kind of her fault too. I'm sorry. This movie just it checked off so many boxes for me. This is probably one of the best performed films in my list, probably like the second best in my opinion. Just these performances are spectacular. The mother Laura, the father Carlos, just the once again the tour de force performance from this mother who once again is showing off just every emotion possible. And then, of course, the mystery of the orphanage itself and the perceived ghosts that may live there. Yeah, this movie just does so much for me. It's a truly a near masterpiece for me. I mean, I love every frame of this film. I have no complaints about it. It's just, oh God, it almost brings me to tears just thinking about it. And I'm not even a fucking parent. Think about that. I'm not a parent, and this ending floors me. I couldn't imagine an actual parent watching this and just the flood of tears that would probably come out. But yeah, that the orphanage at number five probably deserves to be higher on my list, but the movies above it are pretty much all 10 out of 10s for me, and I would probably call the orphanage a 10 out of 10. I mean, there's, as I said, there's not a wasted frame in here. Whew. Oh man, I'm getting flustered just talking about it.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I was thinking of this one very heavily once I kind of knocked the Brazilian ones off. This was one that I was really looking at, but as much as you sort of praise the ending, that's kind of the reason why it fell off. Just I'm not in the mood to cry at horror films, and damn it, it got me in Train to Busan. I vowed that that was going to be the only one that did it, just because it's the zombie film, but yeah, that's sort of the reason why. Even though I have structurally no issues with it, the fact that it does, it kind of was the reason why. But yeah, the rest of this film is fantastic. I mean, you said it best. It's just spectacular, and the mystery is just absolutely engaging. The ghosts are they're secondary, but they're still terrifying when they pop up. And yeah, I mean, we can. spend as much time as we want on the ending. I mean, I get why you love it, and I'm not at
Sure.
all surprised why.
Mhm.
Just for me, that's not necessarily why. So
Sure. I mean, I
yeah,
understand that people don't go into a horror movie to be sad. I mean, and it's the same thing with me. I don't look for these kind of films. But you got to realize, guys, I'm an old man. I'm hardened. Very little gets a lot of emotional response out of me. And when a horror movie, a legitimately, you know, I wouldn't say terrifying, but a legitimately scary horror film that at the end leaves me a blubbering idiot. To me, I have to stand and applaud. I mean, it's just an absolute achievement for these guys that they turned a basic haunted house story into a Shakespearean tragedy, and holy shit, is it successful! I totally understand that this isn't for everyone. I'm sure a lot of people are starting to realize how much I enjoy dramatic horror from some of the films on my list. There's not as much quote unquote fun horror movies on my list. They're definitely more emotional and dramatic, but when a movie does that to me, it's few and far between, and I have to praise it every
yeah,
time. And yeah, The Orphanage has gone down as one of my favorites.
yeah. I mean, you said it best. I'm more of the fun horror fan, so
Sure.
yeah, that kind of I think perfectly sums it up. So let's try this little experiment of mine in pronunciations with native languages, because I think this is going to be the tongue twister amongst all tongue twisters that I'm going to promote. My number four, non si deve profanar il sonno de morte, or the living dead at Manchester Morgue.
Nice.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. Spanish Italian, so it's still predominantly Spanish, still predominantly from Spain, but basically a small little machine that is intended to produce this ultrasonic ray around crops and flowers and stuff that is supposed to drive bugs away, ends up reviving the dead, and they go on a rampage in the countryside, which gets this couple involved with this police officer who's unaware of the zombie mayhem and just blames the couple as the culprits in the murders. So it's a fun little dueling backstory. You get the hardened cop trying to track them down and pin these crimes on this couple, but then you got the zombie rampage in the midst of everything, and it doesn't really coalesce until the end, but it's still a lot of fun. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, it's very heavily Night of the Living Dead. It's still very much into that kind of mindset, and I'm a big fan of that. So you don't really get like the you don't get like the extravagant stuff that the Italians would do later in the decade, but
Mhm.
yeah, I still had an absolute blast with this one. Fantastic set pieces, not as much gore. I mean, like I said, it's not as extravagant, but the gore is fantastic when we get it. Great set pieces, a lot of fun little zombie confrontations, even a small little main zombie with the guy that they come out of the river. They I don't remember much. I think it was a guy that drowned that they were never able to find the body, and he's basically one of the main zombies from there on out. So fun little main zombie for those that prefer that, but overall an absolute blast.
Mhm.
Definitely one for those that are in the old school zombie mode, slow shuffling, just the relentlessness, approaching that don't really let up and all that, but definitely give this one a watch. It's an absolute blast.
Yeah, this and one other film were the only quote unquote classic Spanish horror films that almost made my top 10. Oh, and by the way, not bad on the pronunciation. You didn't butcher it nearly as bad as you think. But
I always get that il profanar,
yeah,
ill. That's
no,
always yeah, that's always
uh,
the stuff that gets me, but yeah.
I hear you, yeah. But this one and Tombs of the Blind Dead are the two movies that almost made my top 10. Like I watched them both this week or last week or sometime in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, I wanted to put them on there so bad because I am a huge Night of the Living Dead fan. I tell everybody all the time it's the first horror movie that I ever took seriously. I saw it at 9 years old. I had already seen some horror movies up to that point, stuff like Horror Hospital, Blood Eaters, some of the lesser known horror films of the early 70s. Um, but yeah, this one, and then like I said, Night of the Living Dead being the first horror movie that I really looked at as a serious horror film, not like a B movie. Even though, for all intents and purposes, Night of the Living Dead is kind of a B movie. At the time, it was revolutionary, and it spoke to me in a lot of ways. And so, Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, same thing. Absolutely love this film. And Tombs of the Blind Dead is just another one. I've already talked about how much I love zombies, and the only two classic horror Spanish horror films that almost made my list are both zombie films. So that kind of says how much I love the subgenre. So yeah, great choice on this one. Cannot disagree.
Nice.
All right. So for me, where are we? We're on number four. So for me, number four, I just got finished talking about emotional Spanish horror, and here we go again with another ending that kind of left me floored. Not nearly the gut punch that The Orphanage is, but this one, for being a more modern film, just worked for me in every way. In fact, it is my number one film of 2019. So if you've been listening to me for that long, you might already have an idea what this is, but this is one that just came out of nowhere for me. This is a writer director that I had never heard of before this point, and now she is literally one of my one of my favorite writer directors coming out of Mexico. And that is, of course, Isa Lopez, which makes this film Tigers Are Not Afraid. This is one that, once again, had enough fantasy elements in it and dramatic elements in it that some people may argue it's not horror. There's very obviously horror elements in it. I mean, there's an actual ghost. There's a scene with dead bodies, right? Getting up, rising. But ultimately, this is a movie set around the Mexican drug cartel, basically a group of kids trying to survive without parents, a group of orphans, I should say, trying to survive in a city controlled by the Mexican cartel, where they literally will just snatch people off the street in the middle of the day and do whatever, make them slaves, sex slaves, torture them, have fun with them. I mean, Lord knows what. And kids are one of the biggest, targets of the Mexican cartel in this particular town. Um, our titular, oh, not our titular, but our main actress who plays Estrella, who, if you don't know, that Estrella is Star in Spanish, so her name is Star, which is very pretty. Uh, she uh, she early on in the film, unfortunately, she kind of loses her mother to an attack from the Mexican cartel, leaving her as an orphan. She ends up meeting this group of kids led by Shine, a weird name, I know, but yeah, he calls himself Shine, and he's the leader of just this gang of just adorable orphans who, 1 minute are just a bunch of adorable kids playing soccer, and then another minute they're attacking a drug lord. So it's definitely um, the main gist of the movie is about these kids living on the street. But our climax does definitely go into the horror realm. I won't get into the specifics of that one, but this is another one that I kind of caught a little bit of heat for, making it my number one of the year because, as I've said, I actually appeared on the 22 shots of moods and horror top 20 episode or top 10 episode for 2019. And believe it or not, one or two of the hosts on that show actually gave me some shit for making this my number one of the year. But you know what? It's always my list, and it's always about the movies that move me. Yes, there's a place for fun, visceral horror, for blood fests and everything like that, and that's cool. And I love those movies still. I mean, I am solidly a child of the '80s, born in the '70s, but solidly a child of the '80s. So slashers and all the great monster movies and sci-fi horror and everything else of the '80s all speaks to me. But it just seems as I've gotten older, I've developed an appreciation for some of the more dramatic horror, and Tigers Are Not Afraid is no, absolutely no exception. This is It's a work of art to me. To me, it's an absolute 10 out of 10. Once again, it's a short movie. It's only an hour and 20 minutes long, yet you get so much in this film. I mean, the pace is almost frantic at times, but then other times, like I said, the kids will take a break from their horror-filled lives to play soccer in an abandoned mansion, and it's just the most adorable scene, and I love it. Um, so yeah, Tigers Are Not Afraid. I can't say enough good things about this. Issa Lopez's next movie, which will be produced by Guillermo del Toro, is a cowboy werewolves movie, which sounds absolutely scrumptious to me, especially coming from this director. So yeah, looking forward to that one. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about this movie. Tigers Are Not Afraid, another emotional journey for me. This one, it's not just about the ending. There are multiple gut punches throughout this film. Obviously, when your main protagonist is a group of children and they're dealing with a real, a potentially real world Mexican cartel, yeah, my friends, the movie gets dark. It gets very, very dark. But yeah, um, I got to shut up about this one because this is one of the films on my list that I could talk about for 2 hours and still have more to say about it. So yeah, number four, Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Yeah, I saw it once when it came out doing year-end prep. I didn't consider it horror enough, but I'm not gonna split hairs. It's close enough.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you've got a
yeah,
ghost, you've got, like I said, dead bodies rising from the grave, if you will. I mean, there
yeah,
are elements there. Like I said, I won't argue with anybody who says it's not horror, but
yeah,
it's adjacent, so I'll take it.
yeah. It's close enough. I'm not gonna split hairs for it.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna throw a JP at you, but
Thank you.
and I just took a guess and figured that was gonna be him, but
Oh yeah, it's not a
yeah,
hard guess.
yeah. So moving on, we're gonna go with my number three. This is my ultimate hands down favorite Mexican horror film of all time. 1990s Ladrones de Tumbas, Grave Robbers. I I absolutely love this movie. It's just a simple classic slasher film. Basically, a group of kids stumble across this old knight that's buried in the grave beneath this abandoned cemetery, and he basically just comes to life and begins killing them off one by one. I first saw this when I was in a middle of a Mexican horror kick. Basically, there was a small period of time where I really wasn't a lot of Spanish of Mexican horror, so it was so Mexico was kind of a small little blind spot, and I realized that there was a TV station that I had that aired a whole bunch of Mexican TV, not just horror, but a lot of dramas, a lot of comedies, a lot of other stuff. So I always tried to make sure that I got to the horror stuff when I could, and this was one of them. And I just absolutely was floored by this. Just it just oozes atmosphere. There's just so much, gothic ambiance here. The scenes with the knight coming back to this knight, and I mean like a knight figure. He's got the robe, he's got the cross on him, and he's got all kinds of he looks apart basically. But he comes to life and he just starts running muck. The gore in this is fantastic. The kills are brutal. It's just a fun, fast-paced film. I absolutely love this. Yeah, this to me is one of my favorite films of the '90s. Like I said, it's 1990, so it fits in the '90s. But I've always been a fan of this one. So much so that it's actually one of the few films that I own the Blu-ray for. I have the I actually managed to track down Vinegar Syndrome's version, and it includes the slipcase. So that's how much I enjoy this film.
Nice.
So yeah, it's one that it kind of has a little bit of sentimentality just because it was one of the first ones that I saw when I, like I said, wanted to expand my knowledge of horror internationally and started picking Mexico. So yeah, my number three, Grave Robbers, just an absolute. I always recommend this for people wanting to check out underrated slasher films. So if you can, give it a shot.
Awesome. Yeah, this is one I must have missed. It doesn't even sound like something that I had heard about at the time, but I mean, I'm always down for some Mexican horror, and if it's this high on your list, I'm gonna call that a must watch. So yeah, I'll be looking out for that one.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's a fun, fast-paced film. Tons of gore, lots of kills, great atmosphere. Yeah, it's a blast.
Very cool. All right, so getting into my top three now. On my number three film, we've actually already talked about it. It is our first double, go figure, of our top 10. Oh, no, and Veronica was also a double. So it's our second double of
Yeah,
the top 10. And that is, of course, Argentina's Aterados, or Terrified. This goddamn movie. Once again, this is a movie that hits a lot of things that I love about horror. I'm a big fan of anthologies. And this movie, though not really set up like a traditional anthology, still works so well as one. Because basically, the whole movie takes place in one neighborhood. And it's just all these different supernatural events that are going on, to different people within this neighborhood. And it all comes down to just this great over the top finale. And let me tell you something about this movie, folks. Don mentioned earlier about how there are some jump scares in here and how a lot of people kind of poo poo jump scares. I 100% agree with Don. Every single one in here works. And this movie also has a great balance of the two things that I was talking about, fun horror and the more dramatic horror, because this film still has some spectacular performances. The very opening scene of this film has a husband watching his wife get absolutely decimated by some kind of invisible force. And the performance that he gives in that scene is absolutely heart-wrenching. As a husband, I put myself in his shoes, and I don't know what the hell I would do either. Like, you're grabbing at your wife who's floating and being thrown around a room, but it's like you're absolutely helpless. This is the love of your life getting thrown around to her death. And yeah, that's like the opening scene of the goddamn film. And the movie never relents. It slows down a little bit. No complaints here. Obviously, once we get to a segment about a mother with her son returning from the grave, the movie slows down a little bit, but the intensity of it doesn't slow down. It's still an incredibly tense, scary segment. And let me tell you one other thing that I'll say about this movie. My wife, for those who don't know, is not a horror fan. My wife tolerates horror. She will watch it periodically with me. I don't force her to watch the more intense horror. Watching this for the first time for Fresh Cuts, I didn't know what the movie, because anybody who listens to me also knows I don't watch trailers, I don't read synopses before I watch the film, I don't read reviews or articles. I try to go into my films as absolutely blind as possible. So I actually did watch this movie with my wife. Now, folks, when my wife does watch horror with me, it's usually more funny to her. Like, I mean, she's the kind of person that could watch Texas Chainsaw and laugh when that girl gets hung on a hook. This is the kind of mentality that my wife has, and I love her to death for it. At the end of this film, there is a monster that comes running out of the house onto the street, chasing one of our main characters who's getting into their car. This is the first time I've ever seen my wife react to a horror film. And not only did she react, my friends, she jumped up on the couch and screamed, "What the fuck is that?" I've never heard my wife do that ever. And I almost missed it because she said that, because I was in such shock. I turned my head to look at her and I almost missed the monster myself. But to get that kind of reaction from someone who really doesn't care about horror movies at all, um, it just speaks to this movie and what they're able to do, how they're able to affect their audience. And I can't say enough good things about this movie. Once again, an absolute 10 out of 10. One of my favorite movie posters ever. I absolutely love the creature that I'm talking about at the end of the film is on the movie poster. And again, no pun intended, it is absolutely fucking terrifying. And Terrified is a perfect title for this film. It may be kind of hokey to some people, kind of corny, but and admittedly I thought that myself when I first heard it. I'm like, Terrified, really? That's the name of a movie? Okay. And then I walk away and it's literally a top 3 favorite Spanish language horror film of all time, and I don't think anything is going to bump it out of this top 3. I adore this film. I can't, again, I can't say enough good things about it. Every segment, it works. Every moment of tension is effective. It's gory, it's visceral, yet still you're getting great performances, drama, great score, great cinematography. I mean, yeah, this film is that, in my opinion, it is one of the most perfect balances of fun and dramatic horror that I've ever seen. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough, folks. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. Terrified, out of Argentina from 1917. Excuse me, 2017.
Yeah.
Ah, 1917. Good times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have it on there. It's the first one that we've actually doubled up on, so it's there for a reason. So
Mhm. There you go.
yeah. So going on to the top two. This is going to be the oldies and goodies. Both of these are old school Spanish horror from the mid '70s. So you're probably gonna maybe films, but you're not necessarily gonna guess which one. So
Mhm.
my first one at number two, La Noche del Tierra Ciego, Tombs of the Blind Dead.
There it is.
Yeah, I knew like you said, this one was gonna be there. For me, this one absolutely has to be on there. I even managed to snag the version that has both the US and the international cut just because they're so different. But
Nice.
the international version, the original Spanish cut, is just fantastic. Basically, a woman just woman on holiday. It's meets up with an old friend of hers and rekindles a romance, which annoys her traveling companion to the point that she actually decides to leave a moving train while they're taking a trip through the countryside, where she visits this abandoned monastery that has some unearthly visitors that prowl the grounds at night. When she doesn't come home, her friend, her companion, and a group of other unsavory locals get together to go look for her and meet the same fate that she did. So, title kind of gives it away what's going on here, but I this is just an absolute treasure. Probably, I would say, the most terrifying on-screen beings I've ever seen. I just absolutely adore the makeup on these beings. And I'm kind of leery towards calling them zombies just because they don't necessarily behave like true zombies. They still rise from the dead. They're still just this huge, ongoing mass of creatures that come after you and kill you. But they use weapons. They don't eat flesh, and they kind of go back into the ground at night and rest. So, they're not necessarily out during the day, so they're not necessarily under the same rules as zombies. But considering the time period, it's 1971. It's still early enough in the genre's development that the flesh-eating ghouls were basically just introduced in Night of the Living Dead, so it's not necessarily popular yet. Because this actually manages to, if you didn't realize it, beats Let Sleeping Corpses Lie by a couple of years. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's the first zombie film from Spain, and it's the not necessarily the one that puts the flesh eating on the map, but it's still, it's still a lot of fun. Great set pieces. Love the, like I said, the look of the creatures. The setting, the finale in the train is just fantastic.
Mhm.
Lot of great action, lot of fun. You even have a fun little Argento-inspired stalking sequence thrown in the middle of this for no reason, just to add a little bit of variety in this. So it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love it. Atmosphere, gore, great creatures, Spanish sleaze, can't beat it. So my number two is Tombs of the Blind Dead.
Yeah, this is one I was introduced to early by some of my older family members who were big fans of, people like Paul Naschy and of course the director of this film, Armando de Osorio. I have to 100% agree with Don. Some of the most terrifying zombie designs we've ever seen. Just so effective. Even though a lot of modern day zombie fans, especially younger ones, folks in their 20s might look back at this and watch it and maybe not the movie might not be as effective for people like them, but man, this movie is great. I think this movie is spectacular. As I said, one of the only two 70s movies that almost made my top 10. It's probably right around 12, I'd say. If I did like a top 15 list, I would be talking
Yeah.
about it. But yeah, this film is spectacular. It almost pains me not to have it in my top 10 because of what it means to me early on. Like I said, this was probably only the second or third zombie movie I'd ever seen, and it was. I mean, if I thought Night of the Living Dead was scary, this fucking movie just gave me nightmares for days. Just yeah, so well done, so well made, and again, a great pick at number two for Don.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so for me, my number two, as some of you might remember, I did mention earlier that my favorite director is Guillermo del Toro, and of course, one of his films has to show up on my list, though surprisingly, he is not at number one now. Obviously, he's had some spectacular films with just beautiful fantasy elements and set design, and obviously, people kind of lean towards Pan's Labyrinth and Crimson Peak for some of his more modern films. But for my top 10 list, I'm going a little farther back in his career. I'm going back to the film that he did just before, literally the year before he did his first American film, which was, of course, Blade 2, the vampire film with Wesley Snipes. That was, I believe, that was his first English language film that he directed and his first American film. So, that's right around when he blew up, like literally just a year or two before, the Hellboy pair of movies were to come out and make him an absolutely international star. And then, of course, Pan's Labyrinth. I mean, I happily will say that that is his masterpiece. I adore that film, but not quite horror enough for me. A lot of fantasy elements, some great creatures. And I will admit, the Pale Man is fucking terrifying. I'm just beyond terrifying. So there are horror elements there. Anybody who would put this on a Spanish horror top 10, I would never argue with them because fantasy in and of itself is kind of a blood brother of horror, if you will. So,
Yeah.
but like I said,
Well, to be honest, I was actually kind of expecting you to put it there. So
I mean, I thought about it. Like I
yeah,
said, to me,
I
it's his
wouldn't have.
best film.
Like
It's
I
his
said,
masterpiece.
like I said, that was the reason why. Because I'm just like you. I absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not horror enough for me on the list, but I was actually expecting it to be.
No, I hear you. No, I mean,
So
it's
yeah,
probably my favorite Guillermo villain of any of his films. Uh, I forget what his rank was, but you know what I mean. The
yeah,
main dude in the Spanish army there, just holy shit, just one of the guiltiest pleasures ever of watching him die. I always say I don't like when horror movies throw in shitty characters just to be fodder for the killer, but in this one, this man, it made sense why he was such a scumbag. And obviously, I don't agree with it, but it did make
yeah.
sense in his own mind. So yeah, I will never argue that Pan's Labyrinth is his masterpiece. But for my number two spot on my top 10 favorites horror films, I am going back to 2001 for what is my favorite ghost story of all time, regardless of country, American, Spanish, Italian, it doesn't matter. This is my favorite ghost story ever. This is El Espanzo del Diablo, or The Devil's Backbone. Once again, this is a kind of a slower paced horror film, not a whole lot of set pieces. It's really more about developing these characters, both the good and bad characters, developing the kids, and then of course the story of I think I forget the name of the ghost in this one. Santi was the ghost in this one, and developing his backstory. I mean, this movie is genuinely a story-driven horror film, but because he still, has those great horror set pieces in here, and ultimately it is solidly a ghost story that you can't really just. It's not a war film, even though it does take place during the Spanish Civil War. You can make an argument that it's very dramatic, but it is still solidly a ghost story. And honestly, it's one of the first Guillermo movies I ever saw. I actually did see this when it was new. Believe it or not, my father turned me on to this because he was talking about this director Guillermo del Toro that he kind of likes. He showed me Kronos, which I think was Guillermo's first genre film, which I do also love. And you got Ron Perlman in that one, so you got a little bit of American DNA plugged in there, which is nice, for us American fans to be able to see someone that we recognize, even though he is speaking Spanish through the whole film. And man, Ron Perlman's Spanish actually is not bad at all. But yeah, for me, Devil's Backbone is like the quintessential Guillermo del Toro horror story. As much as I love Crimson Peak, as much as I love, some of the other, Kronos and stuff like that, Devil's Backbone just speaks to me. The setting, the bleak atmosphere. I mean, it looks like they're in the middle of a desert in that orphanage. The bomb, the unexploded bomb that's literally in the middle of their courtyard, that's supposedly still a live bomb. It just didn't go off when the Axis powers dropped it during World War I, so it's still sitting there. Just everything about this film, our protagonists, our antagonists, the mistress of the orphanage herself with her fake hollow leg. Just I absolutely love this film. The mystery of it works for me, especially obviously on first watch. The mystery works for me. All as I have already said, the performances, the backstory, the score. This score is epic. Actually, I absolutely love this score. If I could find this score on vinyl, I would absolutely buy it. It is a spectacular series of pieces of music throughout this film. And I mean, again, absolute 10 out of 10 for me. Not my favorite Guillermo, as we've already discussed. Pan's Labyrinth will pretty much always be my favorite Guillermo movie. But this one having a little bit more of a horror tinge to it, I think was a little bit more appropriate for this list. So, yeah, at number two, my favorite director with The Devil's Backbone.
Nice. That's on my honorable mentions. I'm a fan of that one as well. Shockingly enough, I know it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but yeah, I love that as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you said. It's just absolutely just y- it tells a different story, and it was I think it actually was the first time I'd actually seen a Guillermo film. So
Mhm.
yeah, oh, it always stuck out, and I've always been a fan of it. Just ran out of slots, unfortunately, but
I hear you.
yeah, yeah. So if you've followed this list up till now, you'll recognize that even though I've been a huge fan, I said I've been a huge fan of Spanish horror. I haven't been able to put one of Spain's national heroes on the list until now. So 1972's El Espanato Surge de la Tumba. Horror Rises from the Tomb. So Paul Nash's masterpiece. It just absolutely fantastic. So he plays a guy who joins a group of his friends out investigating a cottage that's just recently been inherited to him from his grandfather or father, I think. He just recently inherited it, and he and his friends decide to go visit it, see what the property is like, and decide what to do with it. And come to find out that buried on the ground is the grave of Alaric de la or Marins, I think.
Marnak, Alaric.
Marnac.
Yeah.
Marnac. That's yeah. Alaric del Marnac,
Hmm.
who's a cult leader back in the 16 or 1700s, and basically was this all-powerful witch that just basically was, the greatest terror that the country landscape had ever known. And soon comes under his influence and tries to resurrect the terrible Marnak to disastrous results. This is just an absolute blast. I had so much fun with this one. Nashi is in prime form here. I really, really wanted one of his werewolf films, but I just couldn't put it on there because I love this one that much more. Just fantastic set pieces, great all around performances. You mix a little voodoo, you mix a little black magic, you mix some sleaze in there, you get a few zombie scenes, And even have a few soccer scenes, some early slashing with this strange killer going around that plays this weird little side story in the first half, just to throw a little extra weirdness in. Yeah, this is just an absolute blast. It's gothic, it's gory, it's got all kinds of different elements going on. I had a blast with it, and it's definitely one to watch. So anyone that's a fan of Spanish horror, you need to watch Nashi. Not just this one, but anything from him I've seen is just an absolute blast, and this is my favorite one. So made sense for me. My number one is Horror Rises from the Tomb.
Yeah, another spectacular selection. One that wasn't quite in consideration for my top 10, but definitely a highly regarded film. I mean, Paul Naschy's great. He is a national hero, if you will, and to the Spaniards like me. Um, I wasn't born in Spain, but I am a Spaniard by family. My parents were both born in Spain, so yeah. And they both speak very highly of certain directors, and Paul Naschy is actually one of them. Just Franco, guys like that. So yeah, it cannot be denied that that's a great choice for number one. But for me, I I'm actually going to show a little bit of my true colors here. I'm going to pick what is probably the most basic bitch number one Spanish horror film of all time. Not to say that everybody would be in agreement with this, but I think a lot of people, especially maybe the less hardcore horror fans who have actually seen this film, probably would agree that it is one of the best ones. I've already mentioned how much I adore zombies and infected stories. And then the other element of this film is, of course, found footage. And anyone who doesn't know, I love found footage. I even like the bad found footage films. To me, found footage is one of the most effective filming techniques to immerse the audience into the film. A lot of people might complain about the shaky camera and, blurry shots and things like that. But ultimately, I mean, when you're in a situation like that, and you're holding a camera, you're not really concerned on focus. And that level of immersion just works for me. Obviously, with stuff like Cannibal Holocaust kind of started the trend, but Blair Witch Project absolutely blew my goddamn mind when I saw it. I'm one of the people who champions that movie. I'll die on that hill that the Blair Witch Project is one of the scariest films ever made. If you disagree with that statement, that's fine. All opinions are valid, but it's the kind of thing that when it came to the Blair Witch Project and many found footage movies like this, because of that immersion level, I tend to plug myself into the film, and I'm whatever male character is there, I tend to look at it as, okay, what would I do in this situation? Would I be more effective than him? Things like that. So that does tend to affect my enjoyment of a film, the decisions that are made in the film. Don, more than anyone, knows how much I can't stand terrible decision making in horror films. It tends to bring down almost every movie where I deem it, just terrible, stupid characters doing terrible, stupid things. Um, but for whatever it's worth, this one just works for me once again in every way. It is my number one. It's very obvious that I am, of course, talking about Paco Plaza's 2007 masterpiece, Wreck. I mean, what can I say about this film? I've already said I love zombies, I love found footage, I love Spanish language. This movie is visceral, it's gory, it's terrifying. I mean, there are legitimate scary moments here. One of the early scenes when they go into that old woman's apartment and they only see her silhouette as it suddenly decides to attack them, just so effective for me. The whole thing with the building getting quarantined and no one being allowed to leave, just, again, just seems like something a shitty government official would decide to do in that situation rather than risk, a full blown epidemic in their city. But you're basically dooming everyone in this building to the most horrible, painful deaths possible. And it all culminates in one of the most tense found footage scenes ever set to film. I mean, that final scene with our first infected, or, depending on if you go with that these are zombies or go with the more Rec 2 explanation that they potentially might be demons, whatever the case may be, that final scene of the first film leading right up to the final frame of the film, which we've all seen in the trailer of our main protagonist getting dragged away in the darkness. This movie just absolutely works for me. I adore it. It's an absolute 10 out of 10. I watch this movie probably 3 times a year, and it gets better every goddamn time. So yeah, as basic bitch as this decision is, my number one Spanish horror film of all time is Wreck.
So I'll be completely honest here. I haven't seen any of them.
Interesting. It's really a
Yeah,
matter of how much found footage you can stand, because if you don't like found footage, I wouldn't recommend them.
no, well, it's not necessarily that. I don't mind it. I
Mhm.
tolerate it. To me, it's just another storytelling vehicle. I'm perfectly comfortable with it. It's just it's like every other genre. I've seen crappy ones. I've seen good ones.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not put off by it, but it's always been one of those. I've never been able to get my hands on it.
Mm.
So I was the first time I ever was able to do so was the Scream Factory box set, but it was a little expensive when it first dropped. So I've kind of been waiting around a little bit just to make sure that it's affordable enough that I can justify splurging on it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I mean, it's a good series. I think the first two are absolutely great because the second one is really just more of a continuation of the first, so it fits
So
right in.
yeah, so I've heard.
And then
I
Rec 3 is where they kind of start to veer away from the found footage. Like a majority of the film is still found footage, but then at one point in the film, it kind of transitions to a full production film, with your standard camera shots and everything, which is kind of it's a little weird, especially when you're used to this franchise. But overall, I think this is a great series. All four films are watchable, but the first two are absolute classics.
Yeah, I've heard that. For me, it was just a matter of getting my hands on them legally.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was always the struggle for me to try to find them. So I'm definitely interested. I'm not opposed to found footage. I'm a huge zombie fan, so I'm definitely intrigued. I just haven't been able to get to them. So I would absolutely have no doubt that my list would change had this been viewed before, but unfortunately, it's not. So
No, no worries.
yeah, if I can get my hands on them and do this again next year, my list would probably change. But yeah, as of now, I can't say I've seen them. I have seen the two American ones, Quarantine and Quarantine Two. I don't mind. I don't mind them, but I'm definitely aware that there's a drop off of quality. So
Yeah, the first, I mean, Quarantine isn't terrible. It's basically a shot for shot remake of Wreck, just with American actors, obviously. It's still very watchable. It's just they don't really change anything about the story. The ending is literally shot for shot the exact same.
mm,
So, it kind of takes a little bit away from it. But there's still some good performances in there. Quarantine 2 is kind of where I got to draw the line that I just did not enjoy that movie very much at all. It had its
mhm.
moments, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it.
Mhm.
I've basically seen them once, so
Yeah, same.
yeah. But yeah. Since we're done with the list, go ahead and do some final mentions real quick. Um, my as Venom mentioned, he had two on mine. So the other ones that I had were 1967's Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, or as more commonly known in Spain, La Marca del Hombre Lobo, the first of
Mhm.
the Paul Naschy, Waldemar Daninsky films. And I also had a another one on here, 1981's The Night of the Werewolf, or
Oh
La
yeah.
Noche El Retorno del Hombre Lobo, which kind of an odd choice, but I've always been a fan of that one. It's always been one of my favorites in the series. Um, so yeah, I mean, as mentioned, he kind of picked off a couple of my other ones, but we'll leave it at that. If you have any other honorable mentions you want to shout out real quick.
Yeah. I'll just because I've actually got like four or five, but I won't get into too much detail. 2019's The Platform was a Netflix exclusive that year. We did review it on Fresh Cuts, and it did end up on my top 10 list for that year. Just definitely a different kind of horror film. Once again, this is one of those films that if somebody argued that it wasn't horror, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. But, there is some pretty visceral death in here. Obviously, the movie takes place in a prison, which is, in and of itself a horrible situation. And the ending, which I know was rather contentious, a lot of people were not happy with that ending. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the perfect ending, but and that is still available on Netflix, so check that out. It is the platform. In Spanish, it's called El Hoyo. Next would be Julia's Eyes from 2007. This is once again more. This one does go into the slasher territory a little bit, but the first half of the film is very solidly psychological thriller. It is the story of Julia. She is a woman who has a degenerative eye disease, so she's slowly going blind to the point where eventually she will be completely blind, and she's well aware of this. She's basically trying to solve the murder, not the murder, but basically her sister commits suicide, her twin sister, actually, who was already blind. Both of the sisters have this degenerative disease, but the sister, went blind first. She ended up committing suicide, but Julia doesn't believe that her sister committed suicide, so the mystery kind of goes from there. This is a little bit of a long one. This movie is a solid 2 hours. But if you're a fan of thrillers, I would highly recommend it. The reason it didn't make my top 10 is that I'm not as satisfied with the ending. Not necessarily the final scene, but I mean like the finale, the grand finale where Julia finally meets her antagonist and, they duke it out. I wasn't real happy with how that ended. The final scene of the film, I actually do love. I think it's just a beautiful sentiment, but I'll leave that at that. Next would be Time Crimes. Now, this one, I'm starting to feel a theme here. Once again, not really horror, though you could make an argument that it dips into the slasher genre. This is actually a sci-fi thriller. It's about time travel. Basically, a gentleman is chased by a slasher, a killer in who wears head bandages to cover his face. He ends up hiding out in a scientific laboratory where they actually have a time machine. He asks the technician there to just hide him. All he says is, "Hide me, I'm being chased by a killer." And of course, he ends up jumping into the time machine. It goes off. He ends up getting sent back into time, only an hour and a half, but it turns into this just wonderful cat and mouse story between this killer, our protagonist Hector, and then even, dare I say, different versions of Hector. And I will leave it at that. That is Time Crimes. Once again, if you're into sci-fi thrillers, check that one out. One that I reviewed recently on No More Room in Hell is Witchin' and Bitchin' from, I believe it's from 2013. Once again, this is Alex de la Iglesia, the director of Day of the Beast, which did make my top 10. And based on the title, you can tell it's a movie about witches and they are bitchin'. And the title actually is rather perfect. It is a horror comedy, so it's a very fun movie. And it actually gets more fun when it gets to the actual horror of the film. Like the first part of it is funny, with this guy who robs jewelry stores with his young son under tow. So, the story kind of devolves from there. But yeah, Witchin' and Bitchin', great movie, weird title. And then the last one I'll bring up is a cool like cannibalism film about a family that actually partakes in cannibalism. That is, of course, We Are What We Are from 2010. We did get an American remake in 2013 from director Mickey Keating, was it? Or Jim Mickle? I can't remember. It's one of them. Um, but yeah, the original Spanish film is solidly superior to the American remake. As I said, Cannibal Family. Basically, the movie starts out with their father passing away, and then they have to kind of live without their main provider or their hunter, if you will. And the movie kind of goes from there, leading to a very inevitable ending. You can almost see the ending coming miles away, but it doesn't make it any less satisfying. So yeah, so that's We Are What We Are, and yeah, that's it for my honorable mentions.
All right, nice. So yeah, we'll leave it at there for now. So yeah, thank you again for joining me. It's always we've stuck around together for as long as we have for a reason, and I'm definitely glad we got to do this. So thank you so much.
Oh, this was so fun. Actually getting to put together a top 10 list of my, some of my favorite style of horror films, of course, Spanish language. It just made me so happy. Putting this list together was an absolute joy, even though it kind of was nerve-wracking at times, because like I said, having to kick out let sleeping corpses lie, and then booting Tombs of the Dead, and it just every decision was heartbreaking. But I still
Yeah.
gotta stick with what with my gut, and my gut says these 10 films are my favorite as of right now. Obviously, if we do this show again in another couple of months, as you mentioned, that list might change. Who knows? It might still comprise of the same 10 movies, but the order could change based on my mood. I don't think the top three will ever change. Actually, the top five of my list will never change, from Wreck down to The Orphanage. Those are just some of my favorite movies, regardless of language, just ever made. So yeah, thank you very much, Don. This was a blast.
Yeah. So here, you know me, and you follow my work, you know where to find you. But for those that are unfortunately unable to follow you, and or I shouldn't say not necessarily unable, but unfamiliar with everything we do, go ahead and let them know where they can find. Well, I should say you, but should say us.
Well, for us specifically, Don and I are on two other shows together, both of them under the No More Room in Hell banner. So the first show is, of course, the weekly show, No More Room in Hell presents Fresh Cuts. That is where we look at the newest genre releases every week. That is our weekly show. So I think our latest episode was on The Long Night, starring Scout Taylor Compton, which was a cult film. So anybody who knows anything about me, you know how much I like cult movies. So check that out. And then the other show that we do together is No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts, and that is, of course, our creature feature podcast where we're still early in that one. We've only done 7 episodes, so we kind of at first we're concentrating on like some of the biggest titles, the King Kongs and the Wolfmans of the world. Now that we've kind of gotten our feet wet a little bit, we're starting to delve into some of the more obscure creature features, like 1977's Empire of the Ants, things like that. So, on our latest episode, episode 7, we take a look at 1980's Alligator. We not only review the film, but we also talk about some of the special features on the new Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray release of that one. So, that was a fun episode. So, definitely check that out. And as far as myself, you can also hear me on the main show, No More Room in Hell. That is a bi-monthly podcast where we look at two more obscure horror films, if you will. We try not to do like some of the standards of the genre, if you will. So if you're looking for reviews of No More Room in, of excuse me of things like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, our show is not the one for you. But if you're looking for a review of excuse me, what was it, Executive Koala? Ah, my friends, my No More Room in Hell is for you. Um, so all three of those shows are available on the Dark Discussions podcast network, darkdiscussions.com. Don and I are also on another show that is unfortunately on an extended hiatus. I don't know why I even bring it up, other than just the hopefulness that maybe someone will hear this and clamor for new episodes. But Don and I are also can be heard on Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space. That is available on the Legion Podcast Network. I believe we've done 23 or 24 episodes of that show.
Yeah,
And
somewhere in there. Yeah.
yeah, and of course, Underwater Kaiju. So, of course, we're talking Godzilla, Gamera, and all sorts of kaiju films in between. Um, I think the last episode that we did, which unfortunately was probably almost a year ago, I believe we looked at Godzilla versus Destoroyah, which is my favorite Godzilla movie. Go figure. Um, so, you still got 23 back episodes to check out on Legion Podcast if you would like. And that is it for me, Don.
All right, yeah. So all of these shows will be available down below for you to check out. Go ahead and give him a follow. Like I said, I've podcasted with him more than most other any other person on the planet, so it's definitely for a reason.
I took over Bill Casanelli's spot.
Yep. So until next time, we will see you with another episode. Later.
Adios, amigos.